Hello everybody and welcome to this video on the relatively newly released Toliss Airbus A321 aircraft for X-Plane 11. I myself have been flying the real-world Airbus airliners for a few years now, about 3,000 hours flying them, including the Airbus A321, which we have here today. And I thought, as obviously there's not a lot of flying going around the world at the moment, that it might be fun to have a look at this detailed add-on for X-Plane and maybe give you an idea of what we do with the aircraft in the real world, and maybe you can bring some of that into your simulator at home. Yeah, so let's get started. Today we'll be doing a walk around just to show you the sort of things we're looking out for as we do our walk around on the real aircraft, and it gives you a bit of an appreciation for what the Toliss team have done here creating this add-on. Very impressed with it myself so far, so let's have a look at it. So we'll start off as if we've arrived in the cockpit. I will do some other videos on the setup, but for now we'll just get the aircraft sort of in a powered up state, which is how we'd have it before whoever is going to fly goes and does the walk around. Different airlines will have different procedures, so what I'm talking about today is just a general idea. It's not specific. It's certainly not for any use in any real world flying. Obviously, this is just for your own ideas in your simulator. So we've arrived in the flight deck. Cockpit preparation checklist. I'm using the plugin XChecklist, which is a free and a rather neat way of doing it. And this is just the checklist from the Airbus A319 by Toliss, which has been around for a while. It's pretty much the same for the A321. There's only a few minor differences involving mainly the fuel system, the weights, and some of the use of the speed brakes and flaps. So for the checklist wise, pretty much the same. So we'll run through this and then we'll go and do our walk around. So we arrive at the aircraft in this cold and dark state, which I've set it up to be. Pretty typical of how the airplane will be left overnight. Got a ground power available already, which is great. If you haven't got that and you need it, you can go to the Toliss ISCS, Interactive Simulation Control System, Ground Services, External Power, and you see there, if I get it on the screen, we can just flick that on and off, which is very handy. I really like this system they've added here. So we'll start the checklist. Parking brake is on or set. Engine masters off. That's engine master 1 and engine master 2 off. Ignition selected to normal. It is in normal. Landing gear lever down. Obviously, we want that down before we power up the airplane. Exterior power connect. It is already connected. Not a requirement. It is possible to start this airplane using the batteries and the APU. But for now, we want the GPU. Battery 1 on. So they're above 25.5 volts both sides. Battery 1 can go on. Battery 2 on. And now we can turn on the external power. Normally as well, it's missing from this checklist. We check that both the wipers are off before we turn on the power. Otherwise, if there's any sand or grit outside, it could start causing issues. Might just turn down the sound. I know why. Do it in the Toliss. There we go. Yeah, as I was saying, if there's any grit or anything left on the windscreen overnight and it's dry outside and the wipers run, you'll end up scratching the glass, which is very expensive, as you can imagine. Great, next step then, flaps are up, ground spoilers retract, disarmed, probe window heat auto. Very rare to use that. That switch is up there. It should really be an auto. That's what it looks like on. Cross bleed auto. Yeah, that's in there. For the bleed air system, annunciator lights test. Yeah, looking good. Aid is to select to nav. So this sort of stuff you do just getting the aircraft ready, really, as you're up and running. This is not quite how a lot of airlines will do it, but this is the checklist they've used, and it's perfectly reasonable. But what I really want to get to is this part. So strobe lights go to auto, which is fine. They won't come on until we have the slats out. Nav and logo lights can go on, and that's useful for the walk around. You don't need the navigation lights to be working in the daylight in certainly in the UK, but it's nice to know that there's people on the aircraft. So I'm going to leave this checklist now. This will be really for the pilot who's not doing the walk around to do probably the pilot monitoring while pilot flying. So the person who's going to actually fly the aircraft in this sector will head down the air stairs and have a look outside, which is what we'll do now. So we go view, external, free camera. We get down to the ground. So you probably just come out of these stairs here. And you come around, and this is where we would start the walk around on the Airbus. Got the door one left open here. Probably wouldn't be open. Get that closed up. Ground services one left. Closed. Yeah, so here we go then. Starting here, we've got the FO and captain static ports. Check that they're clear. There's little holes in there, which you definitely don't want anything blocking those. That's what we use for our altimeters. It's also used in some of the calculations for the airspeed. Angle of attack indicator sits just above that. Very important that that's not damaged in any way. Usually the jet bridge attaches around this door, one left on these short-haul Airbus aircraft. So it's surprisingly close to quite sensitive equipment. But yeah, so we'll have a check of that. This is the inlet for the avionics cooling system. If you're on a hot day, you might see this open. And it draws the air through and out the other side, which we'll see shortly. But for now, everything in good condition. Closed would be fine on a cold day. Then we can come left a bit. Avionics bay door latch, check that's closed. We've got the oxygen bays, that's for the crew oxygen. We're just checking it hasn't increased in size. If there's a leak, it will blow out this little disc, and we'll be able to see that there's been a problem with that, so it needs changing. And then up here we've got our statics. So these are the pitot tubes. So 2 pitot tubes up here, another static up here for the standby, and then this would be the total air temperature sensor. So that works out the air temperature hitting the aircraft, and also from that we can calculate the ambient temperature around the airplane. Usually the air, or always, as you're flying fast through the air heats up as it goes through one of these sensors, so it has to be calculated. As we move around, you're going to be looking for damage on the any of these really, but also especially the nose cone. Check that these latches are closed. This obviously is slightly different material to the rest of the aeroplane. It's because the radar can't see through metal very well, so they use different materials. So it's quite sensitive. We don't want it to get damaged. Also, obviously, being the nose cone, it's most likely to have had some sort of impact from a bird or anything like that. So worth a good check. Move around the nose. Oh, excuse me for my manoeuvring around here. Also, we'll check the nose gear, obviously. So a few things to look out for here. Got landing, the nose gear locking pin goes into a little hole up here, so you want to check that's not in. If that's let in by the engineers, it basically stops the nose wheel from retracting, so you'd take off and it'd be very embarrassing because the nose wheel won't be able to come up and you'll have to come back round. Got our taxi and takeoff lights here, 2 separate bulbs. Check they're in good condition. The glass could be smashed, something like that. And these are the runway turn-off lights, so these shine at an angle, which are quite useful. Surprisingly useful as well. Taxiing around at night gives you a much better view around you. They're not as bright either. This is our piston, which drives the steering for the nose wheel. So we'll have a look at this, check it's all in good shape. Looking for any leaks, loose pipes, and so on. Check that the wheel is properly secured, no sheared bolts or anything like that. Tyre condition, tread. We don't want to see this worn down to nothing or totally worn down to the cord underneath, which would be really bad. Could be a sign of the tyre that could fail. Any bulges in the tyre, that sort of thing. Here we have our cylinder. This is where the suspension works for, obviously, for the damping. And depending on the weight, how the aircraft is loaded, this could be quite high, like this. It's unusually high, I'd say. Normally a bit lower, and it can be surprisingly low as well. It could be that you've got a lot of weight at the front of the airplane, or as it's loaded and unloaded, this goes up and down. So usually the jet bridge automatically adjusts to match the airplane level, so you don't get any difference in height. Oh, And moving on. Same on the other side really, more avionics bays, more probes, pitos, and statics that we would check. In particular, another total air temperature and 2 more pitos. Another avionics bay, check it's been closed up, engineers use those. This one you do get an indication of in the flight deck as well. And we'll check this tyre, obviously, on the nose wheel. Check it's all in order, no leaks, that sort of thing. Very nice parking here as well, by the way, we're around the centre line. And we've got our other static up here. Narrow door on the right hand side of the aircraft, quite rare to use. This would probably be for wheelchairs or maybe catering, they come in through this door quite often. But check it's all in good condition. These little kick plates here get quite a lot of damage. They're used quite a lot as people drag their suitcases in and out, especially on the other side obviously. So just check for nothing too major. Here we have the outlet for the avionics. So this would typically be open on a warm day. I think it's quite warm here. We're in Edinburgh today. It's closed at the moment. Probably you'd expect that to be open. As you go into flight, these close up automatically as the temperature around the aircraft cools down and the skin temperature cools down. That's what it's based off. And more checking the nose gear here. Very important, the nose wheel. It takes a lot of the strain, obviously with all the steering. It's really quite vital, especially on a takeoff. If you were to reject at a low speed, you really need this to be working well for you, so it's not worth overlooking. More statics, the other side, captain and FO. Yeah, in good shape. Here we have the forward cargo door. Open at the moment, probably typical this time. There's also a little panel under here. I don't think they've drawn it in this simulator. No, they haven't. There's a little panel that pops open, and that's where the ground crew can control this door, open and close it. It's possible to do that without the aircraft powered up, but it needs some sort of ground power to be able to run the hydraulic pumps to do that. Otherwise they have to manually pump it, which is quite time consuming. Here we go then, differences between the 319 and the 321 are starting to become more obvious now. Quite a big gap from the front to the beginning of the wing route, and we get a whole extra full-size door up here. Escape side fitted beneath it, pretty normal. On this door, the escape side's actually underneath. It's fitted on the inside of the door, but here we have it slightly below, so that pops out separately. These doors aren't quite the same, but they're still full-size exits. And here we have our pack inlet. So, excuse me, pack inlet here. And here we'd be looking for any sort of loose rivets. This is obviously in the airflow for the flight, so we don't have anything hanging out, coming loose. We go forward. This is our refueling panel, closed up at the moment. And they haven't really modelled it to open, but yeah, this pops down, and that's where the fueler can set up the weights of fuel you're asking for. We always ask for our fuel in what we do in kilograms in the UK. You don't want to be getting that wrong. Then we convert it to litres later. So yeah, set up the weights on there. Slats, ignition, retract at the moment. On a really hot day on the Airbus, we leave the slats actually out slightly so that they don't trigger a fault that makes the Airbus think that it's got a leak in the hot air system that powers the heat for these. I'll talk about that in another video. I know these aren't heated from the inside here, but for now, yeah, they're all in and away. And then, oh, excuse me. We've got an anti-collision light underneath to check. There it is. Yep, beacon, good condition, off as it would be. When these red lights go on, that's a warning to the ground crew that things are starting to get moving. Over here we've got the main landing gear again. Looking at the tyre condition. Landing gear pins, which show you how much brake wear. They're not modelled on here. They'd normally be in this little section here, sticking out, and you'll be able to see once they go in through this marker, that'll be a sign that the brakes have been worn too much, but they aren't here for this one. Yeah, again, tyre condition, leaks, suspension sort of settings. Landing gear pins as well. I said that there's the pin on the nose wheel, just stop it retracting. Same here, it would fit up here. It's not fitted, so that's fine. So the landing gear wheel should retract on takeoff. It's a landing light, you check that for any damage as well. Glass, it could easily crack up there. So take a step back, have a look at the engine now. Check that these hatches are closed. For the typical sort of maintenance overnight things can be done, oil and hydraulics and so on. But yeah, all in good condition, looking for any loose bolts or anything like that. And you'd also want to get down underneath. I'm not sure we'll be able to do it. No, we can't get low enough. You look underneath, especially on this type of engine. This is the IAE engine. It's had a few incidents where the latches underneath have been left open by mistake, because it looks very similar and you can't see it very clearly from here, and that's led to these cowlings coming off on takeoff, which is obviously very nasty. So you'd very carefully check underneath to make sure that that's not the case. So we'll come round to the front of the engine, and here we go. Ooh. I'm not quite used to X-Plane, I must admit, so still working on it. So in the engine, looking at the fans, nice modelling here they've done by Toliss. There'd be usually another probe up here. That's the EPR probe, gives us the engine pressure ratio between the front and the back of the engine. Fan blades all in good condition, looking for any signs of a bird strike or ingestion, any leaks, wearing around the casing, damage to any of the blades, which could cause quite a lot of vibration, which you'll see up in the flight deck on the engine display. They're all in good condition. Now, same on the other side. Checking these hatches, normally only on one side. We've got the also reverse lock, so there is a pin that sticks out the side of the engine. That means that the reverser is disabled, but that's not modelled on these here. Very rare to use that, but it's the engineers might do that as part of a operating procedure if one of the reversers is not working. Now looking along, we've got more of our slats to check. We'll go under the wing here because there's a few things we want to check. So as you can see, we've got these little holes. There's one here, there's another one out here. Usually on 321, they're both out here. These are they effectively give us the vents. So what they're telling us is if there's been an overpressure in the fuel tanks, whether we need to get an engineer to come and inspect that. So you can see a visible cross in there, which they haven't modelled here, but that would be normally visible up through these holes. There's another one out here. But they're all in good shape today. And then we'll go out to the tip of the wing. Lights, we've got our green nav lights. Check all our statics. It's permissible, some of these statics can be missing on the real airplane, but if it is, the radio can start to get a bit staticky. There is a limit, obviously, like all these things. Yeah, a really nice model, all very proportioned. To be honest with you, it looks incredibly similar to the real thing, just a few minor details that you notice some difference with. Here we have the aileron, droops down at the moment. Obviously, we haven't pressurized the hydraulics. Flap system as well. Slightly different. This is one of the big differences as well for the 319 and the 321. We've got slotted flaps. So the 319 and 320, it's just a single slotted Fowler flap. It's just another slot here. Gives a bit more lift at the lower speeds for this slightly or considerably heavier Airbus. Moving along then, looking at the back of the engine, we're going to look for any oil leaks. Not sure why that's chrome and shiny. The real thing is usually quite dirty back here. So around the edge is where the cold air comes from the fan. A lot of the thrust, or most of the thrust, comes from that. And then we've got our core of the engine where the hot air comes out from the high pressure area in the combustion chamber, driving this blade at the back, this turbine, which is what powers the fan at the front. Looking for any oil leaks, and let's do the same underneath. Again, landing gear here, nothing sheared. This is a model with brake fans, I see. So you've got these little grills, and the air is blown onto the brakes, the cool air to cool down those brakes. You don't do that, especially if you've just landed. You wouldn't turn them on now on stand. They can blow a lot of carbon brake dust out, which is not very nice for the ground crew. So you'd make sure you've done that before you got on stand. Another piston here, again more extended than I would imagine. Not sure if that changes. Let's see if we increase the weight in this ICS screen. Loading purpose. Let's up the weight. Get ourselves really heavy. Keep that zero fuel weight within limits. There we go. Oh yeah! Wow. Slight change there. Why don't we make it really light? Okay, yeah. So again, I'd expect it to be slightly lower down normally. But that's quite impressive. So yeah, they've modelled that. So these are slightly compressed. Looking for the brake lines and hydraulic lines at the back of the wheel here. All in good shape. Again, these are these double slotted flaps. Moving back now, we've got, to give a bit more of an overview, another escape slide for this door. Obviously, this is a big difference to have all these full-size exits on the A321 due to the number of seats in it. Then we've got the rear of the aircraft. It's going to be slightly tricky to show you, but obviously another cargo door. It'll have its own little panel, and the bulk loading where they can put in outsize or strange size items. And under here, they have modeled it. We've got the radio altimeters. So these bounce a radio signal down and back up again, which is how the aircraft knows how high it is above the ground specifically, not just its altitude above sea level. So this is displayed in the flight deck below 2,500 feet, rad out we call it. So yeah, these are both here too, obviously. Not sure what that noise is. Let's have a look. No, don't know. But quite a common noise. It sounds like the bleed is on actually, but I know we haven't powered up the APU, so I'm slightly surprised. But there we go. That screeching noise is quite normal on the walk around on a 320 family of aircraft, as the air conditioning packs are running underneath. Very noisy. They pump out hot air around here, so in winter it's quite nice. Keeps your hands warm. As you move to the back, we've got the servicing panel for the toilets. This is where they pump in all the dirtier water and take it out again. On the other side is the potable water. Another door to check. And then we get back to the tail feathers, as it were, the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer. Checking the condition, static discharges, same as we've done on the wings really. Same up here, you can usually get a good view of them. You've got to be very careful now, we're out near the roads, other aircraft maneuvering, jet blast, that sort of thing, so this is quite a good place to pay attention to what you're doing. We come all the way around to the back, look out, check the tail lights working, yeah, just about, quite faint up there. As you can see though, it's a really nice model. This is pretty much exactly what I'd expect to see. This is obviously the APU exhaust up here, and that's the inlet, which is closed for now. It's just a nicety thing if you're doing the walk around to have the bleed off, and maybe even the APU off, it's much quieter. And then here we go, the other side, check statics, check the rudder condition, fin, that sort of thing. If we come in and look at the APU, we want to see no oil leaking out, flap condition, that's where the air comes in for the APU, so we don't want that to be all dirty or contaminated. And this little mark here, this is usually the fire bottle, so that will show us if the fire bottle pressure has leaked out, which would then mean we'd need obviously to get engineering to come and have a look at that. Drain masks, there's a few of these on the Airbus. They're heated, that should be on the other side normally. Yeah, I'd expect so yeah, as I was saying, I'd expect the drain mask to be over here. But still, it's pretty close, just normally on the other side. This is where the taps, the sinks from the rear galleys can drain out. It may vary, I'm sure there's different fits of Airbus as well, but the point will be, as you're doing your walk around, to steer clear of that mask, because there'll be sink water that comes rushing out of there and lands on you, especially here at the back of the airplane on a windy day, wind blasting under the tail, that could soon fly around and soak you, which is not a very pleasant experience. But yeah, all in good condition. I don't know what you guys think of this livery. Let me know. I'm a big fan of the old school 320 or Airbus house livery. Yeah, so I thought it would be fun to have a go with it today. You don't see it very often these days. And then yeah, pretty much a repeat on the other side. So there's our redouts. 321 is longer as well. So here's our next difference from the 319 and the 320. You want to just have a good check that there's no scratches or scuffs. It's unlikely, but you're just looking for any sign that the tail could have been struck without anyone realizing. It shouldn't be possible, but it's worth being aware of. Some of the older aircraft don't have any system to tell the pilots that they are reaching that limit. So you just have a good look. There'll be no scrapes really, as you'd expect. And then same again on the other side. So more hydraulic reservoir doors where the engineers work at. Just check it's all closed up nicely. You'll see they're all typically arranged to flow with the wind, so they wouldn't be damaged or ripped off, particularly in the event of one of them being left open. They should just sort of hang shut in the airflow. Landing gear pins not there, which is good, so we know this gear should be able to retract. Landing gear, landing light, checks in good condition, obviously retracted on the ground. Very big, very strong things these. So if you see them out, stay clear, because if someone moves the switch in the flight deck and it retracts, it would be quite a powerful thing to get your hand stuck into. yeah, give it a wide berth. And again, tyres, checking the condition, the brake pins, the oleo. That's what I've been meaning to call it, the oleo. As we move around, these up here, these fairings, you might be wondering what they are. There's quite a few of them on the Airbus, and they're there to simply provide aerodynamic cover for the flap retraction system. So there's the mechanics underneath these or inside them that control the flaps. And the reason there's more on the 321 is obviously because we've got this double slotted flap, so it needs a few more to extend them because it's going to run and keep this panel here connected. Back of the engine again, looking for any oil leaks as we head out now. Static wicks, condition, ailerons drooping. And this is what we do in a normal sort of summary style walk arounds. Static wicks here, see if we can get the landing lights, nav light, sorry. There it is, yeah, red nav light, slat condition. Only these outer slats are heat on the Airbus, but I'll do another video on cold weather operations of the Airbus and what we do differently. This is a little inlet in this knacker duct. This just provides a bit of pressure into the outer fuel tanks. Landing gear doors, condition and so on. Got to be very careful as well. These are very sharp, so we're very careful as we do our walk around not to get running into these. You can seriously hurt yourself on that. General rule with the walk around, as you see, it's quite a dangerous place. Lots of hot things, lots of vehicles moving around normally. You'd have baggage loaders on the other side, so it's always look where you're going. Make sure your high visibility vest or some equivalent is on so that you can be seen. But yeah, very, very careful out here. And again, checking our panels, checking inside this engine. Oop, there we go. Fan blades, EPR duct, I know it's not here, but that's where it would be. Condition of the lining, or any oil, any damage to these blades. And then you go down here, have a look at this side of the engine, check the cowls were closed properly, underneath, front of the tyres, landing gear bay. And this little area, this is where the RAT, the ram air turbine, if we lose all of our either electronics or hydraulics, this will come out to repower some of that system in emergency. We'll talk about that in another video, but this is where it would drop out. And this is another inlet for the pack. So the air that the packs comes from either the APU or the engines. What this is an inlet for ambient air outside, which is drawn in, and it's then used to cool the air coming out of either the engines or the APU, which is obviously very hot because it's taken from the compressor stage of those engines. But it's very noisy. This noise you hear now is pretty accurate. That's exactly what you hear. So they've done a good job with the sounds, definitely. And then that brings us back here. So that's pretty much it. Obviously checking this door and slide condition. So yeah, so as I said, this is just a little introduction. I thought it'd be fun to have a walk around of it. I'm very impressed. I think this would normally be up here. I'd expect that to be higher up on the engine. But again, it could be different bits. But yeah, very, very nice. I'm getting great performance in my simulator, so I can actually run it with decent frame rate. But it's very representative of what we see day to day flying the aircraft, especially the sound. Really impressed with that. So yeah, so that would be it. We'd head back upstairs, go and see our friend on the flight deck who would have been busy setting things up, which they haven't done here. I'll do another video on the setup, and I'll do a few more. I'll probably have a look at the cold and dark setup, maybe a look at the flight planning, and probably do a couple of flights with it. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. If there's anything else you'd like to see about this aircraft, do let me know in the comments. Let me know what you thought about it, and hopefully see you all in a video soon. Stay safe, and thanks very much.